In this section, Mutahari explains that he shall cite some examples of Nahjul-Balagha's treatment of the problems of theology relevant to the divine essence and attributes, and later he shall make a brief comparative study of the issue in various schools and conclude his discussion on this aspect of Nahjul-Balagha. However, before proceeding further, he solicits the reader's pardon on account of the discussion in the last 3 sections becoming a bit technical and philosophical, something which is not very welcome for those who are not used to it. But he asks what the remedy is. Discussing a book such as Nahjul-Balagha does entail such ups and downs. For this reason, he limits himself to giving only a few examples from the book on this subject and refrains from any elaborate discussion, because if he were to comment on every sentence in Nahjul-Balagha, the result would require 70 mounds of paper. Mutahari then asks whether Nahjul-Balagha has anything to say about the divine essence and how to define it, and he answers yes, in a lot. However, much of the discussion revolves around the point that the divine essence is the absolute and infinite being without a quiddity. His essence accepts neither limits nor boundaries, as is the case with other beings, static or changeable, which are limited and finite. A changeable being is one which constantly transcends its former limits and assumes new ones, but such is not the divine essence. Quiddity, which may qualify and confine him within limits of finity, is not applicable to him. None of the aspects of beings are devoid of his presence, and no kind of imperfection is applicable to him, except the absence of any imperfection whatsoever. The only thing missing in him is absence of defect or inadequacy of any kind. The sole kind of negation applicable to him is the negation of all negations. The only kind of non-being attributable to him is the negation of any kind of imperfection in relation to him. He is free from all shades of non-being which characterize creatures and effects, free from finity, multiplicity, divisibility, and need. The only territory that he does not enter is that of nothingness and non-existence. He is with everything, but not in anything, and nothing is with him. He is not within things, though not out of them. He is over and above every kind of condition, state, similarity, and likeness, because these qualities relate to limited and determinate beings characterized by quiddity. Mutahari quotes from Sermon 1 that he is with everything, but not in the sense of physical nearness, and he is different from everything, but not in the sense of separation. From Sermon 186, he quotes that he is not inside things in the sense of physical penetration, and is not outside them in the sense of physical exclusion, for exclusion entails a kind of finitude. From Sermon 152, he quotes that he is distinct from things because he overpowers them, and the things are distinct from him because of their subjection to him. Mutahari explains that his distinctness from things lies in the fact that he has authority and control over them, all of them, but his power, authority, and sovereignty, unlike those of the creatures, are not accompanied with simultaneous weakness, subjugation, and subjection. His distinction and separateness from things lie in the fact that things are totally subject to his power and authority, and that which is subject and subordinate can never be like the one who subjugates and commands control over it. His separateness from things does not lie in physical separation, but is on account of the distinction which lies between the provider and the provided, the perfect and the imperfect, the powerful and the weak. Mutahari states that these kinds of ideas are replete in Ali's discourses, and all the problems which shall be discussed later are based on the principle that the divine essence is absolute and infinite, and the concepts of limit, form, and condition do not apply to it. Moving to divine unity, Mutahari explains that another feature of Tawhid, as propounded by Nahjul-Balagha, is that the divine unity is not numerical, but is something else. Numerical unity means the oneness of something, which has the possibility of recurrence or multiplicity. It is always possible to imagine that the quiddity and form of an existent is realizable in another individual being. In such cases, the unity of an individual possessing that quiddity is numerical oneness and stands as the antithesis of duplicity or multiplicity. It is one means that there is unique, none, nobody, nothing is like it. Inevitably, this kind of unity entails the quality of being restricted in number, which is a defect because one is less in number as compared to two or more of its kind. But if a being is such that the assumption of a recurrence with regard to it is impossible, since it is infinite and unlimited, and if we assume another like it exists, it will follow that it is the same as the first being, or that it is something which is not similar to it, and therefore it cannot be called a second instance of it. In such a case, unity is not numerical, meaning this kind of unity is not one opposed to duplicity or multiplicity. And when it is said it is one, it does not mean that there are no two, three, or more of its kind, but it means that a second to it is inconceivable. Mutahari clarifies this notion through an example, explaining that astronomers and physicists are not in agreement about the dimensions of the universe, whether it is limited in size or infinite, with some favoring the idea of an unlimited and infinite universe, while others claim that the universe is limited in dimensions, so that if we travel in any direction, we shall reach a point beyond which there is no space. The other issue is whether the universe in which we live is the only universe in existence, or if there are other universes existing besides it. Evidently, the assumption of another physical world beyond our own is a corollary to the assumption that our universe is not infinite. Only in this case is it possible to assume the existence of, say, two physical universes, each of which is limited and has finite dimensions. But if we assume that our universe is infinite, it is not possible to entertain the assumption of another universe existing beyond it, because whatever we were to assume would be identical with this universe, or a part of it. The assumption of another being similar to the being of the one God, such as the assumption of another physical universe besides an infinite material universe, amounts to assuming the impossible, for the being of Allah is absolute selfhood, and absolute reality. Mutahari explains that the notion that the divine unity is not a numerical concept, and that qualifying it by a number is synonymous with imposing limits on the divine essence, is repeatedly discussed by Nahjul-Balagha. From Sermon 152, he quotes that he is the one, but not in a numerical sense. From Sermon 186, he quotes that he is not confined by limits, nor is he counted by numbers. From Sermon 1, he quotes that he who points to him admits for him limitations, and he who admits limitations for him has numbered him. From Sermon 152, he quotes that he who qualifies him limits him, he who limits him numbers him, and he who numbers him denies his pre-eternity. From Sermon 65, he quotes that everything associated with unity is deficient except him. Mutahari remarks how beautiful, profound, and full of meaning is the last statement, for it says that everything except the divine essence is limited if it is one, meaning everything for which another of its same kind is conceivable is a limited being, and an addition of another individual would increase its number. But this is not true of the unity of the divine essence, for Allah's unity lies in his greatness and infinity, for which a peer, a second, an equal, or a match is not conceivable. Mutahari asserts that this concept, that the divine unity is not a numerical notion, is exclusively an Islamic concept, original and profound, unprecedented in any other school of thought. Even the Muslim philosophers only gradually realized its profundity through contemplating on the spirit of the original Islamic texts, in particular the discourses of Ali, ultimately formally incorporating it in the Islamic metaphysical philosophy. There is no trace of this profound concept in the writings of the early Islamic philosophers like Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, and only the later philosophers ushered this concept into their philosophic thinking, calling it really true unity in their terminology. Turning to another issue, Mutahari explains that one of many issues discussed in Nahjul-Balagha is that Allah is the first and the last, the manifest and the hidden. Of course, like other notions, this too has been deduced from the Holy Quran, although here he is not going to quote the verses of the Holy Quran. Allah is the first, but his precedence is not temporal so as to be in contradiction with his being the last. He is the manifest, but not in the sense of being physically visible or perceptible by the senses, and his manifestness does not contradict his hiddenness. In fact, his being the first is identical to his being the last. Similarly, his being manifest and hidden are identical. They are not two different things.
From Sermon 65, he quotes that, "Praise be to Allah, for whom one condition does not precede another, so that he may be the first before being the last, or may be manifest before being hidden." From Sermon 186, he quotes that, time is not his accomplice, nor does he need the assistance of tools and agents. His being transcends time. His existence transcends nothingness, and his pre-eternity transcends all beginning. Mutahari explains that the divine essence's transcendence over time, nothingness, beginning, and end is one of the most profound concepts of al-Hikmah philosophy. Allah's pre-eternity does not mean that Allah has always existed. Certainly, Allah has always existed. But the divine pre-eternity is something greater in meaning than existence at all times, because existing at all times assumes existence in time. But Allah's being has not only been at all times, it precedes time itself. This is the meaning of the divine pre-eternity, showing that his precedence is something other than temporal precedence. He quotes from Sermon 152 that, "Praise be to Allah, whose creation bears testimony to his existence, temporality of whose creation is the testimony of his pre-eternity. The similarity and likeness among whose creation proves that he is unique. The senses do not perceive him, and nothing can conceal him." That is to say, Allah is both hidden and manifest. By himself he is manifest, but is hidden from, undetectable by, the human senses. His hiddenness from the senses is due to man's own limitations, not because of him. Mutahari explains that it needs no proof that existence is synonymous with manifestation. The more powerful the existence of a being, the more manifest it will be. And conversely, the weaker its being is, and the more intermingled with non-being, the less manifest it is to itself and to others.
For everything, there are two modes of being. Its being in itself, and its being for others. And the being of everything for us depends upon the structure of our senses and on certain special conditions. Accordingly, the manifestation of a thing is also of two kinds: its manifestation in itself and its manifestation for others. Our senses, on account of their limitations, are able to perceive only a limited number of finite objects, possessing the characteristics of similarity and opposition. The senses can perceive colors, shapes, sounds, etc., which are limited temporally and specifically, meaning their existence is confined within a particular time and place. Now, if there existed a uniform light, always and everywhere, it would not be perceptible, and a continuous monotonous sound heard always, constantly, and everywhere would not be audible. The being of Allah, the absolute being and the absolute reality, is not confined to any particular time and place, and is hidden from our senses. But Allah in himself is absolutely manifest, and the perfection of his manifestness, which follows from the perfection of his being, is itself the cause of his hiddenness from our senses. The two aspects of his manifestness and hiddenness are one and the same in his essence. He is hidden because he is perfectly manifest, and this perfect manifestness conceals him. Mutahari quotes a beautiful expression that you are hidden on account of your perfect brilliance. You are the manifest, the hidden in your manifestness. The veil on your face is also yours. So manifest you are, your manifestness conceals you from the world's eyes. Mutahari then proceeds to an appraisal, however brief, of the approach of Nahjul-Balagha and its comparison with that of other schools of thought, which he considers essential for discovering the true worth of its views on the problems of theology. He confines himself to the brief, though not quite sufficient, examples quoted in the foregoing pages, and proceeds to evaluate them. The subject of the divine essence and attributes is one which has been discussed a lot by the ancient and modern philosophers, mystics, and Sufis of the East and of the West. But in general, their method and approach is totally different from that of Nahjul-Balagha, whose approach is highly original and unprecedented. Only in the Holy Quran can a precedent for Nahjul-Balagha be found. Apart from the Holy Quran, he does not find any other source that provides some ground for the discourses of Nahjul-Balagha. As pointed out earlier, some scholars, because of their failure to trace back to some earlier source the notions elaborated in Nahjul-Balagha, have questioned the authenticity of ascription of these discourses to Ali, suggesting that these discourses appeared in a later period, after the appearance of the Mutazilites and the assimilation of the Greek ideology, heedless of the saying that the mean earth with the sublime heaven does not compare. Mutahari concludes by remarking how ignorant it is to compare the Mutazilite and the Greek ideologies with the teachings of Nahjul-Balagha.